fast food or it's garbage. An example of this relation between corporations and health is the impact of neoliberal policies in agriculture and farmer suicides in India. For many years, from the late 80s, there has been in India an important process of privatization and concentration of the seed industry so that the local varieties of seed are lost. And that means that many farmers have increased their debts. And that has begun a process, an epidemic of suicides of farmers. Dozens of thousands, tens of thousands of farmers who committed suicide because they lost their control of their lives, related very much to the issue of food and seeds. And because of this stress, we can talk about a public health crisis that has clearly its roots and in neoliberal policies. So far I have been trying to cover a number of points I think important that everybody in public health should know related to health inequalities. The three main points can be summarized like that. Why investigate? Why take action to reduce health inequalities? Why is this important? Why is such an important thing that this Congress talks about health inequalities? Well, number one, to make visible a serious and ongoing epidemic. Health inequalities is an epidemic all over the world, as we have seen in many examples, between countries, within countries. These inequalities in health are unfair. I mean, what's the reason that a child born, in Liberia, in Angola, can live 40 or less than 40 years of age, and other more than 80? I mean, that's unfair. There are social factors. There is no genetic factors at all, lifestyle factors, etc. can explain that. These health inequalities can be avoided. And third, health inequalities, in my view, is a crucial indicator of social justice. Social justice relates very much with the issue of health inequalities. So being aware and changing health inequalities, we can increase social justice. All of this relates to these social factors, or what we call today social determinants of health. And we have talked somehow of some of them, but that include political factors, social policies, income distribution, education, employment, working conditions, food security, housing, all of these things. Public health is not a matter of what the Ministry of Health does. Ministry of Health, healthcare is important, very important. Healthcare is very important. But these factors are crucial, are such an important thing. We need to talk about that. We need to make research. We need to make policy here. And later on, I'm going to spend a little time, some time, talking about one of them, the employment and working conditions, in which I have spent quite a lot of time in the last years in my own group and with the group MCONET. Now, 5 years ago, 2005, started an important commission on social determinants of health. WHO Commission on Social Determinants of Health, 2005, that cover a whole range of issues: country action, civil society, knowledge networks, global initiatives, Commission Social Determinants of Health. That 2008 released a report, the final report. This report, Closing the Gap in a Generation. Margaret Chan, the Director General, DJ of WHO, said, "This ends the debate decisively. Healthcare is important, yes. Lifestyles are important, yes. But factors in the social environment determine the access to health services, influence lifestyle and choices in the first place." This report should be read by any public health, person interested in public health. It's an important report. 2 slides to summarize some of the things that report says. For example, the report says that social injustice is killing the population on a grand scale. We have seen some examples already. And the reduction of inequities between and within countries is an ethical imperative. This unequal distribution of health-damaging experiences is not in any sense a natural phenomenon, but the results of a combination of poor social policies and programs, unfair economic arrangements, bad policies, and that community of civil society action cannot be separated from the responsibility of the state. The state plays a crucial role, but there is a need of top-down and bottom-up. Top-down, bottom-up approaches are equally vital. Also, the report deals with two more things. I'm summarizing with some points. The report talks about evidence based on health equity and says that these studies need further strengthening. And also that unfortunately today most health research funding remains overwhelmingly biomedically focused. Goes to biomedical. Remember what we said before about Jeffrey Rose and about the causes, the proximal causes and the causes of the causes, right? And also that this research very often is gender bias towards male rather than female. So this is a long-term agenda. It requires the empowerment of people, and there is the need of the political will and to change the reality in terms of the political arena so that that makes feasible the changes that are needed. This report is important, and everybody, as I said, should read this report. At the same time, the fact that this report has been important is that reactions that have come up with this report. And I'm going to spend a few minutes, just a short period of time, reviewing some of these reactions. For example, a reaction from a conservative neoliberal view, typically covered by The Economist, or for example, the Canadian Fraser Institute, among others, right? So they say things that we are not going to spend time here, but sometimes insults, sometimes biases, sometimes talking about these guys are obeying at the moon, these guys have that quixotic determination to achieve perfect political, economic, and social equity. You know, criticisms and sometimes insults, attacking the core of things that we just reviewed. The social injustice is killing people at a grand scale. On the other hand, we have another perspective, more positive, what we can call the progressive view. Many social epidemiologists have said, well, this report is important, this report is covering important issues, as I said. So they talk about the honesty, the courage of the report, the synthesis of the evidence, recognizing that this is not value-free, or for example, the broad scope of the report, or the global picture, or that this report has the potential to become a landmark document in much the same way that Alma Ata was 30 years ago. Actually, Alma Ata was published in 1978. The report on purpose was published 2008. Now, there is another view which is more radical and basically covers a number of issues, saying that this report is important. It's a public health radical view. This report is important, but at the same time there are issues that needs to be covered as well. And for example, 3 points I'm saying, findings that are not so new. Some people said, well, the report says things, but we know that. For example, that some key issues are neglected. Some key issues, important key issues, are not in the report, or that some issues are taken too simplistically. I'm going to cover these 3 points very quickly. Findings are not new. Well, for example, this study, this report says, this report confirmed the reports, confirmed the gradients, confirmed that the poor are worse, confirmed. We know that. We know that from the beginning of the 20th century, even more from the middle 19th century. Somehow we know some of this stuff. In terms of neglected issues, let's have a look to the words included into the report. You know, if you have a look to the report, the report talked about climate change. 29 times the word climate change. 0, the ecological crisis. We are in the middle of an ecological crisis today. It's not climate change only. Climate change is very important, but there is an ecological crisis. The report talks about conflicts. Basically, do not talk about wars, which is important, to recognize. The report talks about stratification, social status, income, occupation, etc. Basically, do not talk about social class, which is different. I'm going to talk right now in a minute about this. And the report talks a little bit about temporary employment and much more on precarious employment. Also because our influence, we were part of the commission, we dealt with employment and working conditions, and we pushed very hard to include the issue of precarious employment. Now, for example, we have to recognize that we are under an ecological crisis. Right? So, this is a cartogram that shows the ecological footprint. The ecological footprint. Again, first world countries, rich countries, have the biggest impact on the ecological crisis we live today, while at the same time, child mortality attributable to climate change is going to impact mainly in poor countries. So it's climate change, but it's also ecological crisis. And the report do not say much about it. For example, the report talks a little bit about conflict, but basically do not talk about wars and weapons and the military spending. Right? We see how here United States spend almost half of the military spending of the world. More than 600,000 researchers dedicated to study and develop issues related to the military. And this is going up, going up. US military expenditures since 1980, going up. And at the same time, the deaths due to wars and conflicts, once again, basically touch Africa and the poorest countries in the world. Social class, that's interesting. The report talks about, if you see the report, talks about social position. Social position. But it's interesting that previous models of the report, the commission who was making